India Energy Transition Summit, hosted by Honeywell and CNBC-TV18, was a landmark event that brought together industry leaders, policymakers, and forward-thinking visionaries to chart the course for India to meet its ambitious renewable energy goals. The summit served as a pivotal platform, fostering collaborations and driving collective efforts towards a sustainable and energy-efficient future. Through this event, key stakeholders engaged in thought-provoking discussions, explored groundbreaking ideas, and participated in strategic dialogues aimed at shaping the future of India's energy landscape. Focusing on India's goal of achieving 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, the summit featured a special keynote address by Pralhad Joshi, the Union Minister of New and Renewable Energy, where he outlined India's ambitious target and strategies for a greener and more sustainable future.
India's energy consumption is the third highest in the world. As per the International Energy Agency, in 2024, India will post an 8% rise in the electricity consumption. Government under Prime Minister Shri Modi recognized the imperative of the energy transition and has made it a top priority. The government's commitment is reflected in the series of ambitious policies and initiatives designed to steer the country toward the more sustainable energy future. That's why PM Surya Ghar, one of the such a major scheme for installing the rooftop solar and providing free electricity up to 300 units every month for 1 crore household. This is the biggest scheme in the world. So far, 2.5 lakh rooftop solar systems have been installed under the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana from June to till date. Overall, if we put together, now it is reaching nearly about 3.5 lakh. National Green Hydrogen Mission, with a provision of rupees 19,744 crores to make India a leading producer and an exporter of the green hydrogen. Let me also inform you that after the launch of National Green Hydrogen Mission, 13 states have notified their green hydrogen policy. With more states showing the interest, this number will go up in the coming days.
A distinguished panel titled Battery Breakthroughs, Shaping the Future of Energy Storage, highlighted key developments in energy storage and grid stability, featuring valuable insights from leading experts in the field.
Let me begin with you, Sambitosh. If we were to ask you about the International Energy Agency's predictions, saying that we need to grow at least six-fold by 2030, our renewable energy storage capacities have to increase significantly if we want to meet our net zero targets by 2050 as a country. Where do you think India is and how are we poised for the future?
Global manufacturing capacity is about 2,600 gigawatt hour. India is about 10 to 20, when global is about 2,600 gigawatt hour. China had planned for 5,800 gigawatt hour by 2025. China was zero in 2020. It is now about 500, okay, in 3 years. We are at 1020. Okay. Our ambition is we want to go up to 100 gigawatt hour by 2030. 50 supported by government schemes, but the rest. So what I'm saying is, look at the scale, look at where the global is, and my challenge and the thinking that I have is whether we'll miss the bus similar to what we missed in the renewable play, in the manufacturing side of it, or will we take advantage of it?
Let me bring in Ashish at this point. Ashish, you offer a range of battery energy storage solutions across the country. What is the one message that you're again and again driving home to policymakers, to audiences like these, to the general public in the country, to your client, in order to not just grow your business, but trying to make them understand the importance of scaling up and scaling up fast and having the right policies for it?
There are two most popular storage systems which are coming up. One, which is the battery energy storage system, and the other one, which is trying to compete with it, it's the pumped hydro storage system, right? These are the two. There are others, but these two seem to be the top two that we need to consider. Now, if India achieves the 500 gigawatt aim for the renewable energy, what it means in terms of the support it needs in terms of storage is it will need 210 gigawatt hours of battery energy storage system. Today, we have about 200, 220 megawatts. So it's 1,000 times increase from what we are today. So that's the scale of the opportunity just for battery energy storage. And today, if we look at the pumped hydro storage systems in India, it's in the range of about 3.3 gigawatts. What we need, as he said, is about 50 gigawatts or so. So that's another 20x type of an opportunity that lies in front of us.
Dipesh, if I were to ask you, give us a sense of how you see Tata Power's story with India's energy transition and in battery storage growing over the next 10 years.
I think for India to achieve their targets, what was mentioned, 210 megawatts of capacity that we have on battery storage, 120 was built by Tata Power. There isn't a week that goes by where you don't have at least 1,000 megawatt hour of battery storage tenders coming out. And there is a beeline of bidders out there to book capacity. We are in a long cycle of low price lithium ion battery, and the technology is improving in terms of number of cycles and so on. What this does is that it brings down cost and it helps us solve a very critical problem in India, which is that of connectivity. Now, for India to grow at the numbers that were mentioned, we need to add around 35 to 40 gigawatt of renewable capacity every year. But we don't have the grid connectivity for that. This year, for example, we only have 10 gigawatt of connectivity left on the grid. Next year, we have 18 gigawatt, and the year after, we have 42 gigawatt. So if your connectivity is running way behind your generation capacity, there is no way you can add this. So the question is, how do you solve it? And that's where the aspect of battery storage fits in. During the non-solar and non-wind hours, use battery storage to use the grid. So you will enhance the utility of the grid through battery storage.
Dhruba, when it comes to the funding angle, how can we make sure that more FDI inflows come into India in the renewable space, in the battery energy storage space?
We are not used to thinking that infrastructure and electricity is a retail business. What I'm saying here is, if I were to say today that there will be an industry of retail energy storage, yes, Honeywell can lead that revolution for sure. What does it do? You have every kirana shop actually putting up 50,000 rupees and trading with the wires as the grid. What changes it? This is the business model for energy storage. Think retail. I'm not undermining the need for what you said as pumped hydro. Yes, some facilities is required. If your question is of financing, as the cost curves goes down, with what? With scale, with technology. Right now, not commenting, but you have clearly mentioned how the cost curve is going down with scale, and it last 10 years at what it's seen. And it's clearly kind of what is called the Moore's law in terms of reduction, which is exponentially gets reduced even as capacity gets increased. And if you apply that, you're coming to a position where you don't have to think of financing. It will become a retail electricity where you're basically saying, but the unfortunate part in this is discoms will become redundant.
So Ashish and then Dipesh, where do you think the retail models will come for? And taking a cue from Dhruba's point, what do you think will be the role of discoms or the place where discoms will be maybe 10 years from now as we push our renewable energy goals?
So today, when we design, and Dipesh and I, we both are in a similar type of a business, we have to design these large systems which are probably custom made, and there is a lot of engineering and there is a lot of technology that goes into it. Maybe the path is to quickly design something which is so modular and that you can just add like Lego blocks. You can keep on adding those blocks one after the other, and you can get it to a larger scale.
Dipesh,
I just add my comments. The PM scheme that's launched, great tailwind. extremely conducive for consumers. In a few markets, we are seeing 10x growth in terms of rooftop. So that's one quick comment. The other one is that finance and the role that finance can play. I think the policy of the government in terms of capital subsidies to make battery cells in India, that could be enhanced. You could come up with a scheme that say over the next 3 to 5 years, we start manufacturing our own battery cell. And then the difference between the earlier announcements and what they could potentially do is that earmark some percentage of your revenue to R&D on battery storage, because you'll see a massive evolution in terms of R&D, especially when it comes to the cathode of the battery.
All right. Sam, if we were to ask you about maybe the policy gaps, how do we ensure our own growth in the world when it comes to renewable energy, battery storage, make sure we are self-reliant? How do we win this battle? What are the policy gaps that you see?
India should seriously look at content and carriage segregation and allow the power sector to actually unleash both employment for our people and these new technologies to be embedded.
There is a need to shift the playing field. There is a need for green industrial policy. There is a need to shift it often to picking winners, which is not prescribed often in many terms. And here I'm pointing the need to start thinking on sodium ion. I know it's 10 years away. And that reduces your dependency to that extent. And when you get captured by technology and do not have a technology capture policy, let the policy drive the technology choices.
Thank you very much to all our panelists. This could have gone on for the next 1 hour, but we've run out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another key highlight was the fireside chat on India's energy transition roadmap, which explored India's strategy, challenges, innovations, and highlighted Honeywell's role in shaping the future of India's energy landscape.
Let me start by where we have left the conversation and ask you about what Honeywell is trying to do as far as the India opportunity is concerned, and also cope with India's unique challenges. 2023-24 has been a milestone year for Honeywell in India in many ways, a record number in terms of what you've been able to deliver from India in terms of sales, the highest ever. First of all, explain to us, as you look at the India opportunity and this energy transition, what looks most exciting to you?
Apart from the energy transition, in terms of where Honeywell is focused and Honeywell India is focused, there are 3 mega trends that we have defined. The first one is energy transition and sustainability, and this is a global trend, and I think very relevant in India, and we've been talking about this all evening. The second one is around automation. If you look at Honeywell, we are a 100-year-old automation controls company. And I think what's different is the whole digital and AI piece. So we are very bullish on that, and that's a mega trend that's driving our growth, the way you described it. The third one is future of aviation. We are big into aviation, and there is element of energy transition there as well. Honeywell, and we've been talking about the 3 panels. Yeah. We have several technologies in that, but I'll break it down into 3 core segments, the way we think about energy transition. The first one is, of course, a lot of technology is in various sectors, whether it's green hydrogen, whether it's battery storage, whether it's carbon capture, whether it is flow batteries, all the technologies that come along with it. The second piece that we haven't really spoken about all evening is materials, sustainable materials. Yes. That's a big piece in our storyline, if you will. And the third one is around economic models. And I can talk about that more, but we think about it very holistically when we think about the green energy transition.
Let's pick up on the automation, and in the context of this move towards AI and now Gen AI, how are you marrying the two, and what looks exciting on that front as we move forward?
We have been using AI for many, many years.
Yes.
Now, what we are doing differently, Shereen, is that for us, what's different a little bit is AI has become a centerpiece of all our products, all our technology. I cannot think of any product or technology that we are developing today that does not have embedded AI. Almost 100%. And that's become a very, very centerpiece of our theme. The other piece I'll say is that a lot of our automation solution in the context of energy transition, will help solve the demand side of the equation, which means that if you control better, if you automate your processes, you consume less energy.
Right.
You run more efficiently. And by virtue of that, you reduce your energy consumption. And that's a big part of the equation. If you look at the energy efficiency itself, that can solve a lot of problems.
Let me pick up on the other two aspects that you spoke of, infrastructure and Make in India. And the infrastructure story, especially in a post-COVID era in India, has been driven largely by the government. The expectation and the hope is now that we will start to see the private sector deliver on that as well. On the Make in India side as well, we've been stuck at that manufacturing share to GDP of about 50% for the last decade or so. And again, the expectation and the aspiration is to take it to 2020 plus. Now, how would you play both those? How do you see the opportunities opening up on both those fronts in India?
Make in India is become important because of the government push today. We have a very methodical, we have 3 manufacturing plants, which we manufacture for India and we also export, and that's what we've been doing for ages. Now we are very focused in thinking through every product line that exists that we sell in India to be Make in India. And that's a function of the volumes that we can sell in India, and that determines the economics of whether or not we bring that product or that line into India. And we carefully go through that exercise every year for every product line to figure out whether or not we would make it in India. But to also justify our cost point as we operate in the India market. That's how we think about it.
We've seen the Indian aviation market emerge as a cautionary tale of what often tends to happen. So given where things are today, how do you see the Indian aviation sector opening up, and what is the kind of potential and headroom for growth that you see on the fuel side as well, given that?
The reality is, India became free in 1947, and we added 728 aircrafts in the time since independence.
Yeah.
India has 1,500 aircrafts on order as we speak.
Yeah.
In the next 3 years to 4 years, you will have 2,200 aircrafts, which means that we'll triple the current capacity. And we'll add 2x the capacity that we are. So, and that's all done deal. This is not theory. This is the Air India aircrafts and Indigo aircrafts on order that are starting to be delivered. And from our perspective, we supply equipment to these aircrafts, so therefore, obviously, we are very bullish on the segment itself. So there's absolutely no question that this segment and this sector will do very well because of the aircraft that are on order.
Let's talk about something that the government is very excited about, and we heard the minister, in fact, both ministers talk about it and highlight that as a priority for the government, and that is green hydrogen and the green hydrogen mission, which has been sort of put in place, and the execution roadmap has been laid out as well. How do you read that story?
For the hydrogen, the green hydrogen space, I think, and we discussed this again in the panel, question of cost is a very important one.
Yeah.
And unless you hit that cost point of whatever, $2 or $4, whatever you would call it, is a very, very important hurdle to cross. And I believe that once you cross that hurdle, I think you can really build a hydrogen economy.
Well, speaking of what is great for the country is not just Make in India, but it's also develop an IP in India. Take us through the plans on that front as well.
India is the second largest R&D center outside of US for Honeywell. So obviously India, and we made this investment 30 years ago. This is our 30th year of making that investment in R&D. So we have a lot of capability, and we're not just a back office doing what US told us to do, to be honest. We do a lot of original research out of India for the globe and for India. The other fact that I would like to share with you is that 60% of Honeywell's R&D is spent on technologies that will drive an ESG outcome. 60% of our R&D. And that's also true for what we spend in India. And therefore, a lot of our technologies, I spoke about green hydrogen, I spoke about SAF, I spoke about the battery energy storage, and so on and so forth, carbon capture. A lot of these technologies were developed out of our R&D center in Gurgaon. And that's just, when we share this fact with a lot of people, they scratch their head, but that's the reality. Now, a lot of these technologies are now being implemented around the globe, and we hope that they will soon be deployed here in India in our backyards, and that's our hope.
Let me end then by asking you, Ashish, we talked about the opportunities, but let's also leave the participants in the room here with what you believe will be some of the key challenges that we need to grapple with, both at a policy front as well as from a private sector point of view. And of course, getting the right economic model in place across different sectors will be one of the key aspects. What are some of the other challenges you believe we need to grapple with?
Look, the one we haven't talked about is capability. A lot of the skills that are needed to develop these technologies don't exist. I mean, take semiconductor, for example. That's not an energy transition subject, but it's a massive focus by the government. And what we are finding increasingly is that we just don't have that capability. And the challenge will not be whether or not we can make the technology, but the question is, will we have the skill and the capability and the workforce to really develop that technology?
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Thank you very much, Ashish, for joining us here this evening. Thank you so much.
You get people to come and talk about the energy situation, which covers the global scenario, which covers issues relating to E&P. Most important that you deal with the transition to sustainable energy, covering all the forms. So I find it always a very intellectually stimulating and worthwhile discussion.
I think India's energy transition journey will be unique to India because we are starting from a very substantial base in terms of existing energy infrastructure. But equally, we are starting for a very, very substantial dependency on imported crude oil and imported natural gas. And therefore, the solutions that I think we are going to put together will be playing to our strength.
For India, the energy transition is definitely going to be different from the developed world because here we have huge mass when it comes to consumption or demand. So getting the alternate energy at a right cost point and make it available at different part of the country is the most critical piece.